Greetings, my name is Kerry and welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you my February reading wrap up. I had quite a lot of ambitions for February and I did not deliver on them. I read a total of 5 books, which was much less than I was hoping to read. I did actually film a sort of currently reading in TBR in the middle of February, which was just when I started having loads of problems with my laptop. So if you're wondering why I've been a bit absent, it's because my MacBook basically wouldn't switch on for a few days and I had to take it to the Mac shop to be fixed. So I'd filmed some videos before it broke, which I then couldn't upload. My February TBR, my computer crashed while it was exporting. I didn't realise and uploaded just part of the video, which someone very helpfully pointed out to me that it cut out at a weird place, and then it was when I was trying to re-upload it that my MacBook completely crashed and wouldn't switch on again. So if you'd like to see that video of all that I was intending to read in February, please do let me know, because I'm sure I can upload that again for you even though it's a bit out of date. So let me know if that's something you're interested in. Anyway, so there were several readathons and read-alongs and whatnot that I was trying to take part in February. I didn't do as well as I'd hoped. So as I mentioned, I read 5 books in February. One of these was a book that I already owned. 2 were books that I'd borrowed. One was an ebook and one was a reread. They were all fiction, so I didn't read any non-fiction or poetry or anything like that in February. I didn't tick off anything for any of my year-long challenges, but I did tick off a couple of books I was trying to read for month-long readathons, which I'll go into when I get to them. If you want to hear about the other things I was intending to read for those readathons, that's in that video, so let me know if you want to see that. So I rated 1 book 3 stars, 3 books 4 stars, and 1 book 5 stars. And I'm gonna go through them now for you, and they're actually in the order I read them as well, so the month got better in terms of my enjoyment of the books as I got towards the end of the month. So the first book that I finished in February was the graphic novel version of Noughts and Crosses by Malorie Blackman with the illustrations by John Aggs. I gave this 3 stars. I borrowed it from the library. The 3 stars were more for the fact that I don't enjoy graphic novels. I really liked the story and the premise, but I just didn't enjoy the format, and I don't read a lot of graphic novels, and there's a reason for that, and it's because I struggle with the format. So I picked this one up for Blackathon. I'd intended to read something for all of the challenges of Blackathon. That was my first failure, but I did manage to read a graphic novel. I kind of wish that I'd read just a regular book version of this book rather than the graphic novel, because I think I would have enjoyed it more. That being said, it is a great concept. It's a really good novel. It is young adult. Yeah, I very much enjoyed the story, the premise, the characters, all that. I just didn't enjoy the format, so that's why that one got only 3 stars. The next book I finished in February was Beneath a Scarlet Sky by Mark Sullivan. I read this as an ebook on Kindle Unlimited. I picked this book up for the Too Old for This book club, which is hosted by Ashley from Don't Have a Degree in Reading and Sam from Sam's Nonsense. This was a book club set up for booktubers over 30, essentially, because we often feel like a minority. I quite enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. It is a novelisation of the biography of a guy called Pino Layla, I think is his name. I can't remember. I read it at the beginning of the month, or I finished it at the beginning of the month. So he had a very interesting life during the Second World War. He lived in Italy and ended up as a driver for a quite high-ranking Nazi official, and was a member of the resistance as well, so he was spying on his employer. To me it was really interesting because where I studied French at university, I knew a lot about France's experience of the Second World War, and also being British we get taught a lot about the Blitz and evacuees and all of that, so I know a lot about Britain's experience of the war. But Italy is something that I've never really come across, like we never really talked about what happened in Italy, and so that was really interesting from that perspective to see that insight into the Italian experience of the Second World War. There were bits that I really didn't enjoy. Again, really struggled with the format. There's a reason why I don't read very many ebooks, and this didn't change my mind on that. Overall, I enjoyed it. There were a couple of really heart-wrenching moments, but I mean, I started reading it at the beginning of January, so it took me well over a month to to finish it, and that was because of the ebook format. I find this much harder when I don't have the book to hold. How weird is that? Right, the third book I read in the month of February was, I do have the book of this one, The Body in the Library by Agatha Christie. This is the third Miss Marple book, so I read this as part of Mission Marple, which is hosted by Mara from Books Like Woe. I'd actually read this one before. I read this one last year or the year before, I can't remember. So this was the only reread for me in the Marple canon because I haven't read any of the others, obviously. So I enjoyed this more on the second time of reading it. It's quite savage in places, but I really like Marple as a character. Yeah, I can't really think of what else to say about it apart from I enjoyed it. I remembered who one of the people involved in doing the murder was, but the sort of the more intricacies of the story I had forgotten. But I enjoyed rereading it, knowing Miss Marple's character a bit better, having read some of the rest of the series now. So yeah, I very much enjoyed this one. And I also read most of the next book in the Marple series, The Moving Finger, but I didn't actually finish that in February. I finished it right at the beginning of March, so that one will be in my March wrap up. And I dropped it. So I gave this one 4 stars. And then the next book that I read in February was called Empress of All Seasons by Emiko Jean. Again, this one I borrowed from the library, so I picked this one up as a buddy read for VaLITines. I took part in the buddy read roulette and was paired up with Angelica Kofa, so I'll link her channel down below, and we were talking a little bit about what books we wanted to read, and this was one that she'd got out from the library and was quite interested in reading, and I managed to get it out from my library too, so we buddy read that and we both very much enjoyed it. It wasn't a book that I'd heard of until she suggested it, but I'm glad that she did because I don't think I would have come across it otherwise, and I did really enjoy it. So it is based on Japanese mythology, and the story is sort of a mixture of The Hunger Games meets the selection series meets Children of Blood and Bone. It's got all of like those elements thrown into one. So the main character Mari is a species called yokai, who some of them have quite human characteristics and some of them don't. They're from Japanese mythology, so they are sort of, it's a catch-all term for like fairies and demons, and there are various forms of these. So Mari is an animal wife, which are women who can transform into sort of a bird of prey essentially, but a large one. This is a bird of prey apparently. And her tribe is all women, and they keep their tribe going by the fact that they're very beautiful, and then they con a wealthy man into marrying them, and then after the marriage they steal all his fortune and go back to the village. But Mari is not traditionally beautiful, and so it's considered that she would not be capable of attracting a wealthy man. So instead her mother has trained her to fight from a young age so that she can take part in the once a generation competition to marry the prince. And to do that you have to survive in the palace. There are 4 season rooms which are created by magic, and you have to survive through all 4 seasons, and then one woman will survive that experience and end up marrying the prince. So the aim is for Mari to try and win this challenge and marry the prince. I think there are 500 other women that are taking part, and each round a number of them are killed. Not intentionally by each other, or they're not meant to kill each other, they're meant to be sort of taken out by the elements that are within the rooms. Anyway, and also the other element of the story is that the yokai are oppressed because they're considered dangerous by the emperor. So in the capital city they all have to wear collars which prevent them from using their powers. So all of those elements made for a very interesting story. Angelica and I both said that it felt a bit rushed in places, so like the whole bit where Mari's going through the season rooms, like it's meant to be like 3 or 4 days. To us it would have felt like that could have been extended. It could have been at least a duology, I think, quite comfortably, and it would have made some aspects of the story more believable. There were also a number of side characters that we would have liked to see more developed, and particularly there's a character called the Snow Girl. I can't remember her actual name, so I would have liked to know more about her and more about some of Mari's fellow competitors who she either befriends or becomes enemies with in a very short space of time. There's also an element of insta love in the story, which I didn't like particularly, although I didn't think it was so bad. I've read worse insta love stories, so I gave it 4 stars and I very much enjoyed it and will look out for other books by the author. And then finally, the last book that I read in February was also my favourite book of the month, which shows how my month went really, because it was more about Paddington by Michael Bond. So this is a children's book. This series was one of my favourites as a child. I also love the old TV series. I don't like the films. They are not true Paddington. They're just not the same. They're not as good. They have lost some of the innocence of the books, I think. Anyway, I can't remember if I read this one as a kid or not, so I counted it as reading for the first time because I'm so familiar with all the stories anyway, so I don't know if I actually read it myself or if it was read to me, or I just know the stories because they were in the TV show. Anyway, in this book it is Paddington's first autumn and winter in England, so he sees snow for the first time, he experiences bonfire night and Christmas, and he's just adorable. And I was having a bit of a rough week a couple of weeks ago, so I thought, you know what, I'll just pick this book up, and it was just exactly what I needed to cheer myself up. So I gave this 5 stars. It's just adorable. If you haven't read the Paddington books before, then go read them. Don't judge them by the films because the films are not very good. Right, so that is all the books I read in February. I'm just going to quickly go into what I'm currently reading and what I plan to read in March. So at the moment I'm currently reading On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. This was released last month. I had it on pre-order. I've been so excited to read it. I've got about 100 pages to go. I'm really enjoying it so far. It's about Bree, who is from quite a poor neighbourhood. Her father was killed when she was quite young, and her mother is a recovered drug addict, but they don't have a lot of money. Her big dream in life is to become a rapper, and it's sort of about her trials and tribulations as she tries to see that dream become a reality, and also sort of the struggles that she experiences from the neighbourhood that she comes from. There's gang war going on, which her extended family is linked with. She also goes to a school in a nicer neighbourhood, an art school, which has a mix of white, Latinx and black students, and there's sort of an element of profiling that the white students get away with a lot more than the students who are people of colour. And so there's a lot of that tension explored in the story. Angie Thomas is great at these types of books. You can tell it's from her experience and from her just keeping her eyes open about these issues as they're happening in the States. And for me, it's a really interesting insight into something that I've not experienced, and has made me even more aware of my privilege as a white person. So I'm really thankful to have the opportunity to read these books. So I've nearly finished that one, hoping to finish that today, hopefully. Then there's a couple of other books that I started in February that I'm hoping to try and get through this month. The first one of those is Dune, which is the first book in the Dune series by Frank Herbert. So I started this as a buddy read with a few other lovely booktube ladies, and I'll link all their channels down below. As it stands, only one of us has actually finished the book. You can see I tabbed it up with what I was intending to read every day, but this is just so flippin' heavy, this edition, because it's got the first 3 books of the series in it, that I've just not been motivated to pick it up. So I've actually requested the paperback edition of just the first book from the library. It's ready to collect, so I'm going to try and pick that up in the next couple of days, and then I'll hopefully be able to finish the first book and then make a decision about the series, because the only person who's finished the book has decided not to finish the series. So that's one. I've got to try and finish that book this month. And then similarly, another book that I actually started in January was Oliver Twist, from this, again, omnibus edition, which again is quite hefty. And so when I was in Hay on Way at the weekend, I did manage to pick up a nice diddly edition just of Oliver Twist. I'm now hopefully going to be able to read that a lot quicker. I also got a copy of Great Expectations on its own, so I can now get rid of that hideous heavy omnibus and just read the books individually. Oh, I've also got 2 library books that I've got to read soon, because I'm only allowed 2 library books out at the time, so I've got to finish at least one of these before I go and pick up Dune. So that's Always and Forever Lara Jean by Jenny Han, which is the final book in the To All the Boys I Loved Before series, and The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. So this one was one I was hoping to read for Blackathon and didn't get round to. So I'm going to try and read both of them soon. Then we have in March, from March 8th to 15th, Ninja Book Box are hosting the Indieathon, which is to help people in trying to hit all their targets for the Indie Readathon. That is a year-long event. So they're doing a 1-week focused Indieathon. So I've got a couple of books to pick up for that. First is one that I again had planned to read in February but didn't get round to, which is My Life as the Traitor by Zarah Gahramani. This is a memoir of her experiences in prison in Tehran and how she overcame that. A story of courage and survival in Tehran's brutal Evin prison. So I've had this is actually one of the oldest books on my TBR as well, and it's also will count towards my Read Around the World challenge. So this book's hit quite a few targets for me, which is why I'm really hoping to get to it this month. And then the other one, which will probably actually take me whole of the Indieathon, and I haven't quite, it's not the most portable one, it's The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. So I don't know how I'm going to manage to carry this one around because I was just complaining about heavy books. But never mind, this is one of my most anticipated books of the year. I had it on pre-order. I'm so excited to have received it. It's much heftier than I was imagining. Yes, I'm going to try and read that in the next couple of weeks, because I also have this thing where I'm hoping to read all the books that I buy this year, or like within 3 to 6 months of purchasing them. So I've got that one to go. I'm going to try and read this one in March. And then if I get through both of those in Indieathon, I'm going to read another book that I picked up in Hey on Why, which, oops, just sent a cascade of books on the floor, which is One by Sarah Crossan. So actually all 3 of those books are published by Bloomsbury, which means it's not just an Indieathon for me, it's a Bloomsbury-athon. But never mind. So this one is, I think it's YA, it's about conjoined twins. I've been wanting to read this for a really long time, so I was really excited to find this for 25p in Hey on Why. So that's the 3 books I'm hoping to get to for Indieathon. Hello, coming back a short while later with a book that I forgot that I want to read for Indieathon. So this is The Chosen Ones by Scarlett Thomas. This is the 2nd book in the Wildquake series, the first one being Dragon's Green. The 3rd one is out next month and I've got it on pre-order. So I need to read this one so that I can read the next one. Right, I got the first one in the series in a Ninja Book Box and it was a signed first edition, and now every year Ninja Book Box has a special deal with the publisher where they can get signed first editions of the sequels. So I got this one last year and haven't read it yet, and the 3rd one is coming out soon. So this is another one I'm going to try and read for Indieathon next week. I might actually try and read this one first. There's also 2 more Miss Marple books, which I don't know where I've put them in my big pile of books, but the next 2 Miss Marple books are A Murder Is Announced and They Do It With Mirrors. So I've got those 2 to try and get to as well. And if I get through all of them, then I have a massive own TBR to carry on reading. I've also got my book Death Row that I've not read any of yet this year, so I'm going to try and get to some of them in March as well, maybe, if I manage it. Let me know down in the comments what you managed to read in February. How did you get on? Did you take part in any of those readathons? Did you actually achieve any of the goals you set out to achieve in February, unlike me? If you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought of them as well. You can follow me on my social media. All that information is listed in the description, and please think about subscribing if you haven't already, because it means a lot to us as small content creators when people show that they care about our work by subscribing. So that's all I've got to say today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!